Okay, welcome to this explainer. I want you to picture this very specific, very relatable scenario. You're at a gathering, right? You walk up to someone totally new, you extend your hand, and they introduce themselves. You nod, you smile, and literally 3 seconds later, their name has completely, utterly vanished from your brain. It is the ultimate, incredibly embarrassing post-handshake memory blank. So have you ever forgotten a name instantly? Like you hear it perfectly clearly in the moment, yet you just lose it seconds later. If you're like most of us, this experience makes you freeze. You start worrying, oh no, is my memory failing me? You genuinely start to think you just have a fundamentally terrible memory.
Well, here is the twist. It's not a bad memory at all. It is efficient prioritization. Actually, let me assure you right now, this isn't a flaw in your hardware. It's actually a sign of a highly efficient, rapidly prioritizing brain. So today, we're decoding the science behind exactly why your brain does this and why you are, in fact, perfectly normal.
Let's jump right into Section 1, the bad memory myth and rethinking forgetfulness.
Which brings us to our first real scientific suspect in Section 2, the arbitrary label problem, or dealing with meaningless words.
So, in cognitive psychology, names are considered what we call arbitrary labels. By definition, an arbitrary label is just a word or a tag that doesn't carry any inherent meaning or useful information for your brain to easily latch onto. Think about it. The name John or Sarah doesn't inherently tell you a single thing about who that person actually is, right? It's basically a completely empty vessel until you do the work to fill it with context.
So, what does your brain actually want? Well, your brain vastly prefers remembering things that connect to your existing knowledge or your personal experiences. It strongly prefers to encode someone's job or profession, maybe a specific funny story they told you, or their distinct personality traits. This really highlights the stark contrast between the completely meaningless nature of a random name and the rich, personal details your brain is genuinely hungry for.
This takes us directly to Section 3. Evolution prioritizes facial recognition. We are hardwired for visuals.
Now we're looking at the ultimate cognitive showdown, faces versus names. On one side, we have faces. They are deeply evolutionary, highly visual, and incredibly meaningful for our survival as a species. On the other side, we have names. They're a relatively modern invention. They're purely verbal, and to your primal brain, they're essentially just random noise. Humans evolved to recognize visual faces way more effectively than abstract words. A face has true permanence, while a spoken name is just incredibly fleeting. And get this, here is a fascinating biological secret. Your brain actually has a specialized region dedicated specifically to facial recognition. We literally have built-in, dedicated hardware designed to remember a face you haven't even seen in weeks. Meanwhile, the verbal label, the name attached to that face, completely lacks this dedicated hardware, making it incredibly easy for the brain to just toss it out.
Next up is Section 4, the divided attention trap. Let's look at the social handshake.
I mean, when you're being introduced to someone new, your brain is rarely focused on just the name. Think about your actual internal checklist in that exact moment. Step 1, you're frantically thinking about what to say next. Step 2, you're worrying about how you look. Do I have spinach in my teeth? Am I making normal eye contact? And Step 3, you're busy assessing the impression you're making on them. Notice what completely missed the list there? Listen to the name. Your brain is entirely consumed with putting on a high-stakes social performance.
The absolute crucial point here is this. If your attention isn't focused at the exact moment the name is spoken, the information is never properly stored. Because of this intense divided attention and, frankly, social performance anxiety, the name often fails to fully enter your memory at all. It just bounces right off your distracted consciousness. No way it's sticking.
And this gets even more interesting in Section 5, cognitive overload in active minds. We like to call this the curse of IQ. Look, if you have an overactive or high IQ mind, you are likely running constant mental simulations. You engage in simultaneous thought processing, basically trying to connect dots that aren't even fully visible yet, and you maintain a heavy analytical focus at all times. Your busy brain is literally running a dozen complex background processes at once, all while you're just trying to simply shake a hand and smile. The result of all that intense mental activity? Your mind is simply too busy performing analytical processing to give a random label any kind of focus. All these constant mental simulations create a state of massive cognitive overload. Your memory encoding becomes much weaker simply because you have absolutely zero cognitive bandwidth left to make a random word stick.
Which brings us to our final piece of the puzzle,
Section 6. Building context and meaning. The meaning-making machine.
First, we have to define context building. This is the brain's process of building a world picture, connecting a person's behavior to risk, consequence, or their personality. Your brain is essentially a meaning-making machine. It desperately seeks to understand the whole situation and the entire person rather than just memorizing a few isolated facts. Which leads directly to this critical realization: a name is just a separate signal. It is treated as random noise until it is finally connected to a visual image or a character trait. You see, memory works exclusively through associations. Until a name is firmly linked to a meaningful association, your brain biologically treats it as random noise and automatically discards it to save precious energy.
Let's actually break down the microseconds of this speedy introduction. At 0 seconds, the handshake begins. By 1 second, boom, the name is spoken rapidly. And at 2 seconds, your internal social pressure is already peaking. When you look at an introduction mapped out like this, it becomes incredibly clear. The whole thing just happens entirely too fast. There simply isn't enough time in that tiny 2-second window for your brain to build any kind of strong, meaningful association. So let's tie this all together. Ultimately, you prioritize the why and the how of a person way over a meaningless label. Forgetting a name is absolutely not a sign of low intelligence. Honestly, this should empower you. You need to realize that you're actually wired to see the deeper patterns and stories that define a person, rather than just fixating on the arbitrary words we use to address them.
Which brings us to a final, pretty provocative thought. Are you forgetting, or are you just prioritizing what truly matters? The next time you drop a name seconds after a handshake, give yourself a break. Your highly intelligent, analytical brain was just busy evaluating the real human being standing right in front of you.
If you want to keep decoding the hidden psychology behind your personality and the incredibly strange, fascinating ways your mind works, hit that subscribe button right now. In future explainers, we'll continue to dig deep and decode the complex minds that most people completely ignore. Thanks so much for watching, and keep prioritizing what matters.